Welcome to your daily dose of D. The daily, not so daily dose, your dose, whenever it happens to come out and upload, and whenever I have motivation, whenever you ever have motivation to watch, and it's just a lot of factors that all have to line up in order for you to get this dose, in order for me to produce this dose. And it's just, honestly, I'm really grateful that you took the time, and that I took the time for all of us all to be here, share this space, share this dose. Heads up, the furball has been in a fucking mood. So we'll be caring for him in all his loveliness. We are going to switch up this what I haven't done in a while. Ooh. Yeah, we're doing this. Okay. So we're letting my hair grow back in its natural color, which I haven't done in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 4 years. It's been about 4 years. And these frosted tips are glorious, and it was really stiff and weird this morning and all over the place, so I put just a little bit of shaping mousse, shaping clay, lotion, wax, cream, I don't know. It's in a little bottle, little jar. It smells really good. It's kind of firm. It is styling paste. I know y'all were just dying to know about that. Anyways, now that we've all had our introductions and we're all glad that we're here, let's get to reading and let's get to sharing our information and stories and time. Cheers to y'all, cheers to this, cheers to everything. Let me see if I can play with this just a little bit. Yeah. Alrighty. Ooh. Alright, we're gonna do this one just because I opened to it. We are reading from the 60th anniversary edition of City Lights Pocket Poets Anthology, edited by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. And this particular poem is called Transfiguration by Jack Hirschman. I am peasant next to your language because I am not a peasant, simple next to your love because I wound it, dumb next to your voice because you are my lips, and leave me speechless, leave me also loneliness, hurt me with the inexpressible, and because you live the way you do, and I cannot, I must go elsewhere, in this corner of my shoulder, and weep you, who love me inexhaustibly, more than I can ever hope, to silence with a poem, because it is the silence I hope for, because it is the very pure silence hope itself is, and so I bend. To my pencil I say, you, to the beautiful page, you. I say yes without speaking, I say many things, and still there is room. There is space. Your face is where I see forever. I did not know that was going to be so... I dedicate that to my love, my partner. You know who you are, baby. As it said in the poem, I say many things, and still, there is room, there is space. Your face is where I see forever. All right. We're gonna start with some feminist response to pop culture, the one, the only dramatic flourish bitch media magazine. Well, bitch magazine, but they're also known as bitch media. This is issue number 92, fall winter 2021, Wild. And the cover art, because that is important since I just showed it, is, there's my cover. Huh. There it is. It's by Simra Farouk. Perfect. That is who the cover is by. Beautiful. Okay. Glad that we got that covered. Hair is still. Can we just really appreciate this little angle going on right now? This little swoop thing going on right now. What in the world is happening? This is like. It's winter in the location where I'm at, and I shower 3 to 4 times a week. Because it's cold, and I don't sweat that much. Except when I sleep, and I'm anxious. So, like, a lot. But anyways, it's not like summer. It's not like humidity. And so, my hair has a lot of texture. The less water I put on it. So I took just a little bit of ooh, this is fun. Let's do this. A nice little sloop. Yeah, how do we feel about that? That's good. Anyways, wow, we wasted time. Apologies, y'all. Shall we continue? Community Service Inside the Native Tribe Transforming Justice by Abaki Beck. Illustration by Eloy Bida. Y'all know how I feel about names? My feelings have not changed. They're important. Pronunciations are important. And I am forever a slacker of not looking up pronunciations before I pick the articles, because I really kind of pick them right about when I press start recording. So. Be like authentic. Everything's authentic. Not that. Okay, rewind that statement. I never pretend that never came out of my mouth. I like unscriptedness. For me, I find a lot of comfort in existing in a non-performance space. And I hope that others enjoy watching non-performance space. It's just kind of how I exist normally. Can I ask my friends? Oh, wait. You can. Other than I'm not. Anyways. Community Service Inside the Native Tribe Transforming Justice by Abaki Beck. Illustration by Eloy Bida. The statistics are staggering. 2.3 million people are currently incarcerated in jails or prisons. Another 840,000 people are on parole, and 3.6 million are on probation. Some 113 million people have an immediate family member who is currently or was formerly incarcerated. The violent tentacles of the U.S. carceral system overwhelmingly and disproportionately impact Black communities, Indigenous communities, and other communities of color. Imagining a system beyond the one that currently exists can seem daunting and even idealistic. Calls to defund the police, abolish prisons, and create new systems of safety and accountability are met with ridicule or suspicion. Yet there have long been alternatives to our current criminal justice system. Despite severe limitations put in place by federal policy and the ongoing impacts of historical and intergenerational trauma, tribal communities are reclaiming traditional forms of justice. In Northern California, the Yurok tribe has developed a supportive web of services that includes alternatives to incarceration and fines, wraparound reentry support, and prevention programs that respond to community needs. This system stands in stark contrast to the broader carceral system. Federal and state-based legal systems are founded on disposability, retaliation, and the surveillance of marginalized communities. The Yurok system, on the other hand, prioritizes transformative justice and personal agency grounded in traditional Yurok values. For a village people, incarceration is the equivalent of banishment. Blythe George, Yurok tribal member and associate professor of sociology at the University of California, Merced, tells Bitch, "For us, banishment was at the end of a very long list. In a village society, we need everybody come harvest time." The importance of accountability and support. The Yurok Nation is the largest tribe in California, nestled along the Klamath River, Klamath River on the northern Pacific coast. As a sovereign nation, the Yurok tribe manages its own court system and is able to apply its specific cultural lens to its functioning. Chief Justice Abby Abinanti's court looks very different from a traditional state, county, or federal court. Judge Abby, as the community calls her, sees herself as a community member, not a punisher. In her court, the person facing charges helps to decide how they should be held accountable. "We're a culture that's responsibility-based," she says. "You have a responsibility to and a responsibility for. Yes, there is a consequence for misbehavior, but they get to help decide how to address it because it was their mistake. That's the whole thing about humans. We're pretty mistake-prone." First, Judge Abby gives people the choice of going to trial or working with her to come to a mutually agreeable solution. The majority of people choose the latter option. Second, the individual helps decide how they should be held accountable. In a fishing violation, for example, someone may choose to pay a fine, or they may donate fish to a ceremony or the elders program. In child support cases, Judge Abby works with parents to come to a mutual agreement, which may include requiring the non-custodial parent to provide babysitting, rides to town, or wood or fish to the custodial parent. These non-cash payment solutions are particularly valuable in a community with concentrated poverty. 41% of families with children and 53% of families headed by single mothers in the tribal area live below the federal poverty level. Judge Abby notes that off-reservation courts often garnish wages to resolve child support cases. According to the most recently available Census Bureau data, the average child support payment in the United States is $430 per month. Unlike the U.S. legal system, which Judge Abby calls stranger justice, the Yurok system prioritizes the agency of the individuals involved. "What I'm trying to do is say to someone, you have exhibited behavior that is not okay. How are we going to help you get past that? Because we want you in our community." The tribal court sees a variety of cases, from environmental violations and domestic violence to child support and legal guardianship, but their jurisdiction is limited. The state has criminal jurisdiction over people residing on reservations, including tribal members. In most states, either the federal government or tribes have jurisdiction over their members, but California, along with Alaska, Minnesota, Nebraska, Oregon, and Wisconsin, is a Public Law 280 PL 280 state. PL 280 was passed in 1953 without consulting tribes, and it gives state governments jurisdiction over all criminal matters on reservations. Tribal advocates argue that PL 280 violates sovereignty. Duh. Of course it does. Someone who doesn't live there came and was like, yeah, so we have control over all the criminal aspects here, even though you're sovereign, but we have control. Sovereign means... Just really quick. Alright, so the definition of sovereign is... Okay, so we're first going to say what the Wikipedia says the definition is of a sovereign state, which is a political entity that is represented by one centralized government that has sovereignty over a geographic area. So now to then break that down. So a sovereign state is a political entity, so a group of people, a political body, a group of people who choose how they interact with each other, represented by one government themselves, their government that they have, in the case of the Yurok tribe, their council of elders, or what was the other thing? Or however that. So that government, their government, has sovereignty over the geographic area, or that space. So now we're going to really quick then look up what sovereign means. So when the United States government recognizes that, oh yeah, we took all this land from you, literally this whole fucking continent from you, and so now we declare certain, we're trying to pretend to give back their land so that they can become sovereign again. And sovereign means a supreme ruler, especially a monarch. That is definition number 1. But definition number... Fuck that. That's not right. As a noun, that is what it means. But as an adjective, it is possessing supreme or ultimate power, or a nation acting or done independently and without outside interference. So, really quickly, when the US government, without consulting any of the fucking tribes, claimed that any sovereign state existing in the United States was subjected to outside interference for all criminality aspects, which is whatever the fuck the United States government decides to say it is, that's not respecting their sovereign state. That's technically invading a you're technically invading territory every single time you do that. It's fine. We're still fucking colonizers. We don't live in a colonial America anymore. Bitch, have you looked outside? Have you read the news? Does anyone know anything about Puerto Rico? A territory is just a colony by another name. They get very minimal representation, if any representation at all, in our government, and yet are subjected to our taxes and our laws that they don't get to vote in. You know, taxation without representation, all that bullshit we learned in school, guess what? We turned into the bullies. But we always were. But we still are. Anyways. I'm really sorry. Glad we did that, though. That was some good information. So, PL 280 was passed in 1953 without consulting tribes, and it gives state governments jurisdiction over all criminal matters on reservations or the sovereign states. Which is such a fucking contradiction. It literally says you cannot have outside interference. Zero respect. Zero actual responsibility or accountability. Tribal advocates argue that PL 280 violates sovereignty. Yes. The statute is often cited as a reason that tribes are denied funding for their own systems of justice. This is nothing new. Tribal communities have long been impacted by colonial violence and federal law. Westward expansion and the California gold rush brought extreme violence to indigenous communities. Intentional massacres, enslavement, and disease during the 19th century, the 1800s, devastated the indigenous population, which, by some estimates, dropped by more than 150,000 to a mere 30,000. Damn. That's like a fifth. They lost 4/5 of their population. So 20%. So 80% were either intentionally massacred, enslaved, or died of disease. 80%. Federal legislation has also limited how tribal communities can respond to violence. The Major Crimes Act of 1885 severely limited tribal jurisdiction and gave the federal government control over major felony crimes. A 1978 Supreme Court decision further restricted tribal jurisdiction, asserting that tribes don't have the inherent authority to arrest and try non-natives who commit crimes on their land. The 2013 reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act increased tribal jurisdiction and enabled some tribes to prosecute non-native offenders in cases of domestic violence, dating violence, and some violations of a protection order. These jurisdictional limitations mean that tribal citizens are often arrested, tried, and incarcerated outside of tribal systems, which can be deadly. An April 2021 NPR report on prisons that are run by U.S. Department of the Interior's Bureau of Indian Affairs, where many incarcerated Native Americans are held, found patterns of neglect, despair, and undertrained staff. The report found that since 2016, 19 people have died in BIA-run prisons, and many of them were being held pre-trial for minor offenses such as violating open container laws. Federal officials have known about the mistreatment of inmates and other problems at the detention centers for nearly 2 decades. A 2004 federal investigation found widespread deaths, inmate abuse, attempted suicides, inhumane conditions, and other issues in many of the more than 70 detention centers scattered throughout the United States, the report states. 17 years later, myriad problems remain. By prioritizing UROC values, responsibility, and repairing harm, not retaliation and surveillance, the UROC court has created a system that serves its community better than a system that over-polices, over-incarcerates, and undervalues natives ever could. Protection, not punishment. When she was a sociology PhD student at Harvard University, George, the UC Merced professor, remembers asking Judge Abby, "I have all the training they're ever going to give me. What would be most helpful to you?" The tribe wanted to learn how many Yurok people are impacted by the non-tribal legal system and better understand the experiences of formerly incarcerated people in the community. County, state, and federal governments aren't obligated to notify tribes when a member of their community is arrested, incarcerated, or released from prison or jail. In our county, it would be so helpful if we knew every time a tribal member was booked, George says. The Yurok tribe doesn't have and has never had a jail. That means anyone who is sentenced to incarceration in another jurisdiction is removed from the community. Therefore, it took painstaking work to figure out how many Iraq people were incarcerated in local jails. Over the course of a year, George compiled daily arrest records posted by the 2 county jails. Then she worked with staff at the tribal enrollment office to see who on the arrest records was tribally enrolled. It was almost call and response, she says. I was saying the names of people in jail, and she was going through our enrollment list. On the national level, data on Native Americans and the carceral system is also severely lacking. Racial misclassification, when a police department, court, or other government agency identifies a Native American as the wrong race, contributes to this overarching problem. This makes it difficult to understand the scope of violence against Native Americans, as well as to ascertain the rates of arrest and incarceration. Data also doesn't identify an individual's specific tribe, and the data that does exist paints a painful picture. A 2020 prison policy initiative analysis found that Native Americans are twice as likely as white or Hispanic people to be incarcerated in jail or prisons. These numbers vary significantly by state, particularly in states with large populations of Native Americans. George found that Yurok people were 11 times more likely to have been in jail than white people. Once she identified the extent to which incarceration impacted the community, George began interviewing formerly incarcerated men about their experiences with employment, fatherhood, and community belonging. She found that being grounded in Yurok culture and spirituality helped them find meaning and strengthened their resilience. Despite scant resources